everyone, I'm Blaze. Welcome to my channel. Let's start today's video.
All right, let's get right into it. We have this picture of science in our heads, like it's some kind of perfect, flawless machine just spitting out facts. But the truth? Oh, the truth is so much messier, way more complex, and honestly, a lot more human and interesting.
Think back to your school days. Remember that super neat step-by-step scientific method they taught us? You know, the one with the question, the hypothesis, the experiment. It was like a recipe for discovery. But what if I told you that perfect recipe is only half the story? What if that's not how science really works most of the time?
So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to pull back the curtain on how science actually gets done. Then, we'll get into the human side of things, the values and tough calls scientists have to make. And finally, we'll look at this incredible power science has for both amazing good and, well, for total destruction.
All right, first up, let's bust some myths about that textbook scientific method.
Yeah, this looks familiar, doesn't it? Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, a perfectly straight line from a question to an answer. It looks so neat and tidy. But the thing is, this picture leaves out all the best parts. It leaves out the creativity, the intuition, sometimes even just a wild guess or a lucky break that changes everything.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Listen to Einstein. He basically said the biggest breakthroughs, they don't come from following a recipe. Nope, they come from a flash of inspiration, a creative leap, a guess that you then have to go and test like crazy.
Okay, so if there's no single recipe, what's to stop science from just becoming a free-for-all of crazy ideas? How do we get from that flash of inspiration to something we can actually rely on? Well, the answer is the community. It's this thing called peer review. Basically, before a new idea gets out there, it gets sent to a bunch of other experts in the same field. And their job is to kick the tires, poke holes in it, and check everything. Think of it like the immune system for science. It's there to find and fight off bad information. But, and this is a big but, that immune system is made up of people. And people, well, we're not perfect. Get this. In one study, researchers intentionally put 8 big mistakes into a paper. When they sent it out for peer review, the reviewers only caught, on average, 2 of them. Just 2. And that's why this matters to you and me. It's why bad science can sometimes slip through and why you see those confusing headlines that seem to contradict each other. It takes a while for the whole community to self-correct. And that human element, that brings us to a really tricky dilemma that every single scientist has to face. You know the stereotype, right? The scientists in the white lab coat, totally objective, no emotions, just data. The reality couldn't be more different. Every single choice, what to study in the first place, how to look at the results, it's all shaped by human values. There's actually a term for this, amplificative risk. It's this constant push and pull. When is there enough evidence to say something is true? If you shout Eureka too soon, you could be totally wrong and mislead people. But if you wait too long for that one last piece of proof, you might delay a life-saving discovery. Deciding where that line is, that's a judgment call. It's not just about the numbers.
And making those calls is a huge part of being a scientist. But that human element, that ability to make a choice, what happens when that goes horribly wrong? What happens when ethics are thrown right out the window?
This brings us to the Tuskegee study. It's one of the absolute darkest moments in the history of science. For 40 years, let that sink in. 40 years, from 1932 all the way to 1972, researchers from the U.S. Public Health Service watched the devastating effects of untreated syphilis in a group of hundreds of black men. And the whole time, they told these men they were getting free medical care. The ethical violations here, they're just staggering. The men were never told the real purpose of the study, they were lied to, and, maybe worst of all, when an actual cure, penicillin, became widely available, the researchers deliberately kept it from them. It was a complete and total betrayal of everything science should stand for.
When the story finally broke, it led to massive, sweeping changes in the rules for how you conduct research on human beings. But the damage was done. The deep mistrust it created in communities, especially Black communities, can still be felt today. It's a terrifying example of what happens when prejudice and a total failure of ethics take over science.
So this all leads us to the final, really big question. Science is this incredibly powerful tool, right? But like any tool, it can be a double-edged sword. It can be a force for incredible good or for unimaginable destruction. Let's start on a high note with the good. I want you to look at this number, 82. Any guesses what that is? That's how many brand new, life-saving health tools, we're talking vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, have been developed just since the year 2000.
And that number, 82, isn't just a statistic. It represents millions of actual lives saved, lives transformed. Think about it. A new meningitis vaccine has basically eliminated the disease across a huge stretch of Africa. New, kid-friendly malaria drugs have slashed childhood deaths. I mean, that's the awesome, life-changing power of science right there.
But there's the other side of the coin. The exact same curiosity, the same engine of discovery that gives us those cures, can also be pointed towards devastation. The quest to understand the atom, for example, gave us both clean energy and the atomic bomb. And this really drives that contrast home. On one hand, you have science creating technologies that are saving lives all over the world. But on the other hand, the application of science to military technology has created a massive environmental cost. The Pentagon, for example, produces more toxic waste than the 5 largest U.S. chemical companies combined.
And we're not talking about short-term problems here. The health effects of Agent Orange in Vietnam are still showing up in new generations. The depleted uranium used in some weapons has a half-life of 4.5 billion years. It's going to be around longer than our species has existed. These are scars on the planet and on people that don't just fade away. So where does all this leave us? Well, we started this whole journey by questioning that neat little scientific method from our school textbooks. And I think it's pretty clear that the reality is so much more complicated. Science isn't a perfect machine. It's a tool, a powerful, messy, and fundamentally human tool. And you know what? Understanding its flaws doesn't make science weaker. I think it makes us stronger. Because if we know that science is guided by human values, it means we, all of us, have a say. It highlights our collective responsibility to help steer it in the right direction.
In the end, science is really just a mirror. It reflects our priorities, what we're afraid of, what we hope for. The tool itself, it isn't good or bad. So the final question, the one that really matters, is always going to be for us to answer. What do we want to build with it next?
Until next time, keep exploring the wonders of science.
Okay then, everyone. Until we meet again, this is Blaze signing out.